she was going to do something about it. And that's where she started training to be a PI. And she found out what was going on and what was happening. And that was the first book in the Jolene series.
Hello there, welcome back to the My Future Business Show. I hope you're doing wonderfully well. It is always great to be your host. I get some opportunities to speak with some incredibly talented people, and today is no different. On today's show, in fact, I have the pleasure of welcoming acclaimed author Laura Burke to the show. Welcome to the show, Laura.
Thank you, and I'm glad to be here.
Absolute pleasure to have you here. Now, you and I are going to be talking about your journey as an author, the process that you follow when writing books, and we're also going to take a deep dive into your latest book series called the Jolene Mysteries. But before we do any of that, where are you calling in from today?
I'm calling in from Jackson Springs, North Carolina.
Oh, wonderful. Tell us a little bit about why you love living there.
I don't.
Oh, you don't? Let me guess, Florida is your preferred location?
Well, it was. I lived in Fort Lauderdale for roughly about 25 years, 26 years. And I had to come up to North Carolina to fix some property that I own. And I've been here for about 3 years. And I don't like the cold weather. I'd rather have the heat.
I can understand that, absolutely. You know, I must be quite temperamental because I don't like the heat nor the cold. It's just got to be like porridge, really. Now, I know that there are some pretty significant sort of landmarks around. Tell us a little bit about what the place looks like. You've got mountains and things like that around you?
No, I'm more in the southern part of North Carolina.
Right.
And I'm surrounded by a lot of pine trees, and the population of Jackson Springs is around 300. Most of the older folks that are around me have all died that I knew about 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quite, well, my neighbors are deers. Let's put it that way.
Lots of time for reflection, that's for sure and certain. But when you are reflecting and you have some downtime for yourself, what do you do? What's your thing? What do you like doing?
Well, I don't have any downtime. I have a business that I run 5 days a week, and then I write on the weekends. So I keep myself quite busy, and I don't have any real downtime at all. I like to stay busy.
Yes.
That way I don't have to look outside and say, oh my goodness, I don't have any neighbors.
I tell you what, I always think about, being a busy person. For myself, Laura, what I find is I find it hard to switch off of an evening. Do you find that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I do switch off during football season because I like football and I like to watch football. So,
favorite team?
Yep, I go for Buffalo. I'm a Buffalo Bills fan and always have been and always will be.
Fantastic. You know, you've got to have these sort of things in your life. And do you have a favorite food, I wonder?
Chinese,
me too. Oh, you know what? Honey chicken for me and special fried rice with egg. What's your favorite?
We have what's called the Chinese Garden, and they have a buffet.
Oh, nice.
And I just love to go there and fill up. I like the sweet and sour soup, and I like the noodles and the green beans and the chicken and the beef. I love every bit of it.
I love it. Hey, you talked about having deers as your neighbours. Do you have any pets other than that?
No, I don't. I did have a Chihuahua, which was 16 years old, and I just recently had to put him down because he got to where he couldn't walk that well, and he was just in so much pain. I just had to give him up.
Yeah, well, look, we had Maltese Shih Tzus for many years, and the small dog breeds are just a special type of breed, aren't they?
Yes, they are. Yep.
Absolutely. I love this sort of feedback, Laura, because we get some insight into your life, and I really wanted to say thank you very much for sharing. Now, if we can wind back the wheels of time a little bit, I always get a lot of enjoyment out of this next section where we talk about childhood memories. I'm wondering if you could share a childhood memory with us, a fond one.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I guess it all began with my storytelling because I used to when I lived in Florida with my father, we lived in Sunnyland, Florida, and right behind us was what we call the swamp. And I would go out to the swamp and I'd tell stories to the trees and the animals that lived there. And I've always told a lot of stories, even to my friends. They would love for me to tell a story to them. And that's where my whole being of telling stories and writing became a reality, was
Yes.
me telling stories to the trees.
That's incredible. It's funny because I remember my nana, from my earliest childhood days, she would read just the classics to us, the Three Pigs and those sorts of things. Can
Mhm.
you remember the first ever story that somebody read to you?
um, no, because nobody ever read me any stories.
Oh, really? No.
Really.
Well, look, you've certainly turned the light on yourself and all of the wonderful things that you've done as an author, and sharing your storytelling obviously makes up a very, very important part of that. Now, you talked about always being busy, and I would love to, before we shift gears and talk about your writing, tell us a little bit about how your day goes. Are you an early riser? What happens throughout your day?
Well, I usually get up between 5 and 6 in the morning.
Mm,
I have my coffee, and then I'm ready to go to work about 6:30, 7 o'clock.
right.
And I work until 4 o'clock in the day. And then I have to take off and have my dinner about 5.
Yep.
And then I watch a little bit of television, and I'm usually in bed by 9.
Yeah, no, look, that's a good routine to follow. I used to burn the candle at both ends, but I suddenly realized as I grew older that I enjoy my sleep probably just as much as you do. Now, you talked about TV. Do you have a favorite show? Do you watch movies?
I like to watch movies. I don't really have any favorites. Usually I like to just click it around until I see something that I like, and that's what I watch.
Yeah, fantastic. I love it. Just that ability to have that choice is something else, isn't it? Now, I know that you have a pretty significant background in nursing and private investigations. Tell us a little bit about those two parts of your life and how important they
Um,
are to you.
well, I was a nurse for 22 years, and I really enjoyed nursing. And then I had to leave nursing and find something else to do, because the changes in the whole system became so, to me, ridiculous. I like the old methods.
Mm.
Um, so I became a PI, and I really enjoyed being a PI. I got involved in a lot of serious cases and some that were comical, and I really enjoyed doing private investigations.
I
And
wonder
then
about that, because you go on for me, but I'd love to explore that a little bit more.
um, I got called in to do a lot of cases on the cruise lines. And I had married a man that was involved with the cruise lines. And so that gave me an insight into how the cruise lines work. And then from one thing to another, the ships started hiring me to find different missing objects or to investigate an employee that they weren't quite sure of. And a lot of times it was very funny, because they would think he was doing something and I would turn up that he wasn't doing something.
Oh.
So they couldn't get rid of him.
Now tell me, how did you come to realize you had this skill? Because I suspect not everybody can be a PI.
Well, doing a lot of research and, just being involved. Um, Plus, in my earlier years, I went through training as a cop in New York.
Oh,
And I was a cop for about a year. And I left being a cop. And that's when I started doing my nursing. Um, Having that skill helped me become a PI, because the training you go through as being a policeman really helps with being a professional, practical, in looking into problems with people.
yeah. Well, I hear your story, and you tell me about all of these wonderful things that you've been involved with over the course of your life. And I think, how does one go about setting their mindset? In nursing, for example, you would be exposed to some pretty serious stuff. obviously in the line of PI, you can put yourself into fairly precarious positions. What do you do with your mindset as you need to shift through these different environments?
Well, you just have to sit down and say, okay, this is the way it is, and this is the way it's going to be. And you can either enjoy it, take it as it is,
Mhm.
or walk away. And I always enjoy a challenge. And that's how I became these different things in my life, is because I found it interesting and I liked the challenge. And to overcome the challenge, you have to set your mind to being all you can be. And that's what I did.
I wonder, in all of the experiences that you've had, Laura, did you meet any inspirational people that have helped you become the person that you've finally become today, do you think?
No, but I've met a lot of people that have molded themselves as I am and have have used me as their influence to become things that they are now.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful. The tides have certainly turned, haven't they? Now, out of all of the skill sets that you have gathered, what do you think you do best? What's the one thing that you really do well?
Writing.
Hmm.
For the past 30 years, I have opened a business and I do credentialing for physicians. And I'm still doing that. And I'm hoping that within the next year or two, I can turn that business off and just do nothing but writing. That's my whole being. That's what I want to do, and I'm looking forward to being able to do nothing but writing. I'm putting out 2 to 3 books a year now, and I only write on the weekends. So I can't imagine what I could do if I'm writing 7 days a week or even 5 days a week. I'm sure it'll double.
I can only imagine, I guess, the feeling of writing a book as much as you do. You must lose yourself in the moment. How does it feel to get into the zone, when you start writing and then next thing you know, 4 hours have passed by?
It really feels good. Most of my characters, they tell me what to write. And I know you can probably not understand that, but I even wake up at night and they've told me what I need to put down on paper so I don't forget it. And when I go to my keyboard, that's the first thing I do is I put that on paper. I take my paper and I go to the computer and I put it into my book. Um, and it feels good to be able to finish a chapter and go to the next chapter. And with my books, nobody knows what the end's going to be, not even me, until I get to the last chapter.
Ah.
And it feels really good to be able to knock out a few chapters every weekend until I get to that last chapter. And they don't tell me who, what, or why until I get to that last chapter. And it feels good to be able to just lose myself in the moment and just be able to write.
Yeah, that's wonderful feedback. Thank you so very much, Laura. I can't help but ask this question. I think you said that they come to you and they tell you what to write. I would refer to these as avatars. Is that what you call them?
Yes.
Fantastic. Now, literally, you be just, in the formation. Let's, for example, talk about, I guess, your murder mystery series, the Jolene Mysteries. Where was the genesis of that series? Tell us a little bit about that.
Um, well, I've had another series, it was called the Maison series. And I really never finished that because in the last book, on the book 6, my Maison, he was a detective. He ends up in the hospital and he's going to die. And that's where I ended. I didn't do anything else with him. But Jolene, she's a young girl, and I started with her because she was a teenager and she had this feeling there was something going on with her classmates and young girls. And she kept this, I guess you would call it a book, scrapbook, where she was keeping all of these newspaper clippings of young girls that were disappearing. And she was determined when she got out of school to find out what was going on. Why were they disappearing? And how come they were, turning up dead? And that's where Jolene started. Her father was the chief of police in their small town. He didn't know she was doing all of this. And when he found the scrapbook on her bed because she'd left it out, he asked her about it. And he was very determined to talk her out of doing anything about it. And she was hard headed, like me, and decided that she was going to do something about it. And that's where she started training to be a PI. And she found out what was going on and what was happening. And that was the first book in the Jolene series. And now she's working with the FBI, and she's doing a lot of cold cases with two other FBI agents. And each book, I've got six. I'm working on the seventh one now. Each one is different, but it still has the main characters as Jolene and her two buddies, which are from the FBI.
Right, fantastic. A little bit of insight there. Do you find that art imitates real life? Do you take ideas for your books away from what's happened?
No, not really. Each one is different, and each one is a cold case, and each one comes to me in the night or in the day, and they beg to be solved. And Jolene is the person to solve them.
Yes, no, look, and I also noticed that you have an array of wonderful book covers. Who makes your book covers for you?
There's a girl down in Australia,
Oh, wonderful.
and she does all of my book covers, and she's just such a fantastic artist. She
Absolutely.
does a lot of book covers for a lot of friends of mine that write mysteries as well.
Well, we may be able to share those details with everybody who's on the show a little bit later on. Now, tell me, why did you choose to become an author? And specifically, why did you choose murder mysteries? What got you into that genre?
Uh, well, I've always been inquisitive, and I've always liked mysteries. So I figured, why not put it to use and write about mysteries? I've seen a lot of shows about mysteries, and I think I do a lot better writing than some of these shows that are on TV. I'm sorry, but it's the truth.
Yeah. Well,
So I'm hoping.
it's funny that you should say that, because this is something I was going to ask you later, but it seems like a fairly good time to ask it. You were actually approached by a Hollywood director who loved your book, but actually told you to rewrite it. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Oh, yeah, he wanted me to do a screenplay. Well, I'm not a screenplay person.
Ah,
And I did do a screenplay, and I did send it to them. And he really liked it, but I guess he just wasn't into it because it was so, um, I guess it was too elaborate for his
yes,
taste at the
yes.
time. So he's put it on the shelf for now, and hopefully he'll come back and say, okay, well, let's do it.
I wonder. I like to read, different books, and I find certain authors attract me more than others. Do you have a favorite author?
Uh, no, I don't really.
Mm.
I love all kinds of authors. I have quite a few friends that are murder mystery writers, and they're pretty good at doing their books, and I love their work. So,
It's a bit of everyone.
yep, I'm a member of Mystery Writers of America, and so I try to stay in with the group, and see what they're writing and read their books, as well as keeping mine in touch with them.
Yeah, no, it's a great way to build that sense of community. Thank you again for your feedback. Now, earlier in the call, we talked about your experience talking to the trees, storytelling, and those types of things. How important inside of your books is storytelling, and do you use a three-part play? How does it unfold in your books generally?
Well, it kind of, there's always a beginning, a
Mm.
middle, and an end. Um, in the beginning, it starts off kind of slow, and then in the middle, you get a little more excited, and then at the end, you've got a lot of uh, banging and slapping and shooting, and
Action.
then you got the end. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. And, does it take you long to put together a book? What's the typical duration from start to finish?
Usually about 3 months.
Is that all?
Yeah.
Wow. You must really just click into that zone. Do you write every day or do you have certain days that you prefer?
I only write on Saturday and Sunday.
And that's it.
That's it.
And, I know that you've got a series of books, but do you do individual books as well?
Well, I have, including the Jolene series, I have 18 books.
Just a
Um,
few.
that's just a few. Um, Everybody said I needed to write a romance book. I'm not into romance, but I did write a short book. It's about 40, 45 pages, a romance book, and everybody loved it. And they said I needed to do another one. I said, no, 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 I'm
No.
going back to my mysteries. It's easier.
Because I also noticed on your website, of which I perused, and I noticed that you'd done a children's book as well there at one stage.
Yes, I did a children's coloring book.
I love it.
And everybody loved that too. And it was really surprising when I did that one. A lot of the members of my MWA, they bought it for their grandmothers and their grandfathers because it was something that was simple. And they said that their grandparents liked to color. Well, it's a coloring book plus a storybook.
There you
So
go.
they got it for them, and the grandparents loved it because it gave them something to do, and it got, it gave them something emotional to connect with and to keep their mind occupied by coloring the features that were in it.
Makes a great deal of sense to me. Now, if we can swing back to the Jolene Mysteries, how do you come up with the names for your books? And in particular, the Jolene Mysteries. Is that a dream or how's that come about?
Well, it depends upon what I'm writing.
Right.
Like reader's favorite, just on it was the third book of the Jolene series, gave it a third place and 5 stars. Well, I had one other book, which was Black Orchid, which is an individual. It got third place with reader's favorite and 5 stars also. But each one of my Jolene, the name of the book comes to me in a dream, and that's what I write about. And
Fantastic.
it's that's basically how I come up with the name, and that's what the story is all about.
I wonder, you talked about your other series, you didn't end up actually finishing it. Do you like loose ends or do you have an intention to finish both of the series of books that you've written?
Well, Mason, I'm not really involved in finishing him. He kind of just drifted off, and I said, well, goodbye. I'll see you later.
Yep, done
And
and
he
dusted.
hasn't come back to me anymore. So I don't know whether I'll ever finish him or not.
You mentioned you've got nearing on 20 books that you've written. Is there a favorite for you? Does one stick out?
Black Orchid.
Black
I
Orchid.
think that was my favorite.
Why is that?
I don't know. It was because I guess it was on a beach.
Yeah, everybody loves the beach.
Everybody loves the beach.
Now, when you're writing, I always look inwards. And when I was writing my first book, which I struggled with, and now I'm doing it again, there must be a glutton for punishment. I don't know. But what are you learning about yourself? What have you learnt about yourself as you've gone through your writing career?
That I can turn off the world.
Beautiful.
I can sit down at my keyboard and just block everything out. And it's like when I take on a new doctor to do credentialing for, that's one of the first things that I tell him. If you piss me off, I'm going to put you in my book and kill you off. So
Subliminal messages. Oh, that's awesome. Do you ever have moments where, and I'm reflecting a little bit on my own experience, do you have any moments where you think, I'm having a block here. I don't know what to do. And what is the process for any aspiring author that may find it difficult to put pen to paper occasionally?
well, I've never had a block until this last book that I did.
Oh,
I was almost to the last chapter and I knew where I wanted to go with it, but I couldn't quite get it down. And I just kind of blocked it out. So I said, well, I'm just going to sit back, watch a little television. And while I was watching television, it came to me what I needed to do. And I was able to get it right back going and finish the book.
I bet you jumped up out of that chair straight away.
Oh, yes, I did. And I keep my computer right in my living room by my television. So all I got to do is pull it over to my lap and take off.
You know, you talk about computers, and you know, I suspect they're an integral part of your writing process. But is there power in the pen? Physically picking up a pen, is it different?
Yes, it is. Um, I make a lot of notes and I do a lot of research. And I use a pencil and paper to put it down so I don't forget it when I go to the keyboard. Um, but I can find that putting it in the computer is a lot faster than writing on a
Yeah,
paper. It
yeah.
really is.
It just flows, doesn't it? Now,
Yes.
I wonder, do you prefer physical books? Do you have electronic versions for people? Do you have an audiobook version? Tell us a little bit about the
I don't
formats.
have an audio, but I do have ebooks and paperbacks.
Fantastic. Now, for you personally, are you okay with reading from a screen, or do you prefer that tactile experience with a physical book?
I like to hold the book myself.
Yes, me
I
too.
really do.
I
I
agree.
and I don't think that ebooks, but with today's market and today's influence with all these electronics, most people like to have electronic key, flow easier on a computer or a tablet than holding a book in their hand. But I like the old way. Holding a book in your hand just seems more readable and more believable than reading it off of a screen.
It's more natural, isn't it? It's certainly an
Yes.
experience. You get to feel the, I guess, the energy that's coming from the book as well. But there's going to be a lot of aspiring authors. We have a lot of authors on the show, and I really, really enjoy these conversations. But so, what's one bit of advice for an aspiring author who's just starting out on their writing journey? What would you say to them in terms of, the process, the approach that they take?
Well, when I give a lecture, that's one of the first questions I ask. How many of you would like to be a writer? And almost everybody raises their hand. And then I ask, how many have you started writing? And none of them put their hand up.
Uh-huh.
And I tell them, the first thing about writing is, and most everybody, men and women, have all kept a journal or a diary. And they write in it every day or once a week. And that's the beginning. If you can do that, you can write a book. If you write that first chapter, you can see how easy it can become. You don't have to be scared. Just write anything. Write down what your thoughts are. And that's the beginning. And don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid to start.
Exactly.
Yeah, and once you unlock that creative juice, let's call it, and it starts to flow, it's hard to stop it, I suspect, for you at least.
Exactly. And a lot of people I've had come back to me and say, it was easier than I thought. And I really enjoy it. And that's the whole key. You've got to start and let those energies flow.
Absolutely.
Don't keep them locked up.
Sage advice for sure and certain. Now, a couple of things here. How does it make you feel when you see that your book is in print? And when I look at your reviews online on various platforms, good books, Goodreads, Amazon, everywhere, wherever your books are, there's positive feedback from the people who are reading your books. How does it make you feel knowing those two things?
Very proud.
Mm.
It makes me proud that I'm doing it. It makes me feel that, hey, I'm not wasting my time. This is something that I've really enjoyed. And ever since I was 8 years old and talking to the trees, this has given me insight to who I am.
Absolutely. Well, look, it's been just a wonderful insight, and we've really literally just scratched the surface, given the large library of books that you've created thus far, and hopefully that you'll continue to produce and put out there. So, if people want to access you and these wonderful books, where's the best place to find you?
They can find me on Barnes and Noble. They can look at my website to find my books. And my website is called Laura Burke MysteryWriter.com. And they can see all of my books there, and even the new ones that are coming out. Um, it's very simple to order them. And like I said, all they have to do is put the name in of the book by Laura Burke, and it'll pop it up, and they can order it right from Barnes and Noble. And there's several other places that's on my website that they can also buy the book.
Well, for everybody who's on today's call, if you are looking to access Laura's wonderful books, I will be making sure that there is a link below the post. As always, no matter where you see this interview, and it's going to be far and wide, you'll find a link back to Laura and all of her wonderful work. And with that being said, Laura, I've absolutely loved this call. Thank you so very much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you very much for having me.